Welcome to Chapter 2, Student Diversity. If we go to Slide 2, you will see the different topics that we will be covering in this PowerPoint and are covered in this chapter. If we look at 12 o'clock, cultural diversity, the first topic is related to cultural diversity, and this topic will deal with the challenges of cultural diversity as well as the theories related to minority achievement. Language diversity, the second topic, will deal with those who speak a language other than English. These may be students who are in ELL or English Language Learners programs, or ESOL, which is the English Speakers of Other Language programs. The third topic is related to students with learning differences and different learning abilities. And multiple intelligences is a theory developed by Howard Gardner that we will be studying in this topic. The next topic, students with exceptionalities, in this topic we will be discussing students with learning disabilities and students who are gifted and talented. Working with at-risk students and utilizing various learning styles will round out the topics for this chapter. And since this portion of the course is online, it'll be important for you to be familiar with each concept that is related to these topics. Your text and this PowerPoint can be very helpful, enabling you to acquire the knowledge and the skills or concepts that are related to student diversity. If we go to Slide 3, you can see you're very familiar with these questions. Now, I don't have any question highlighted in yellow, but some of the content from Chapter 2 could be applied to your philosophy paper. Most, if not all, the content for your philosophy paper will be covered in other chapters. However, some of the information from this chapter can be applied to preferred in such areas, such questions such as preferred instructional strategies and the purpose of education. Information from the topic teaching students with different learning abilities can be useful in the preferred instructional strategy section question. And information from capitalizing on cultural diversity and students with exceptionalities could be applied to either the preferred instructional strategies question or the purpose of education question. This information may also be applicable to the ethical role of the teacher. So as you work through the course, think of these questions that are related to your philosophy paper because the content of this chapter could apply to a number of those questions. Slide 4, I would take just a minute and kind of walk through this chapter, take a book walk, and so that you're familiar with the concepts and the topics that will be presented. Page 32 of your text provides a very good outline of what will be covered in Chapter 2. So there are 6 topics, as we said, and our first topic will be cultural diversity. And if we go to Slide 6, you'll see a picture of Sharon Jackson and her class. On page 33 there is a vignette that would be very helpful for you to read, and on this slide it's going to require a post. So I'd like you to think about your first teaching position, perhaps your classroom, and think about what aspects of diversity you would be considering after you meet your class on that first day. And how could you gain a possible understanding of student backgrounds and needs prior to school starting? And post your response on Moodle Forum 2 as response 1. And when we talk about diversity in this context, we're talking about cultural diversity. If we were to talk about diversity in general, then we would look at male versus female. We would talk about students with special needs. We would talk about different cultural backgrounds, but in this particular slide we're looking at gaining an understanding of the cultural background. So what are some ways, if you were a teacher, what would be some ways you might look at creating a better understanding of the cultural background of your students, the cultural diversity of your students before class begins? So post that on Moodle Forum 2 as response 1. Another Moodle Forum response is I'd like you to read these open-ended sentences and post your responses on Moodle Forum 2 as response to. For example, I prefer teaching children who share similar backgrounds because, or I prefer teaching children of different backgrounds because the biggest challenge in a multicultural class is African Americans, Hispanic Americans, and Native Americans have high dropout rates because. So I'd like you just to be thinking about that and then post your ideas or thoughts or responses on Moodle. Slide 8, entitled Capitalizing on Cultural Diversity First Impressions. Pages 33 and 34 provide statistics related to diversity trends in your text. An interesting trend chart can also be found on the bottom of page 34. So please be aware of these trends and take a look at those. And then also I pose a question there at the bottom of the slide. Why is the study of diversity important to educators? On slide 9, there's an article. Would like you to read how diversity trends in the Atlanta metro area impact schools, public services, and employment. And read that article. Might be close to home, and think about how those trends impact those areas. On slide 10, entitled Multicultural Education, the Challenge, cultural and multicultural education are two key terms. How would you describe the culture in which you grew up? What is the culture of Young Harris College? Given the data, why is multicultural education an important consideration in teacher preparation programs? So those are questions. You do not have to post a response to those, but those are questions I would like you to consider as you are looking over this slide. Slide 11, Theories of Minority Achievement. There are three theories related to minority achievement. The first theory, and the theory explained in this slide, is called the cultural deficit theory. Now this theory usually places the blame of low student achievement on the cultural background of students. What students bring to school lacks what is termed in the book cultural capital. And as a teacher, can you influence cultural capital? What is cultural capital? Does the cultural deficit theory provide an excuse for failing students? On this slide, see the two problems or issues that are related to this theory called cultural deficit theory. And see page 35 in your text for more information relative to this theory. Slide 12 is the second theory of minority achievement. This is called the teacher expectation theory, and research supports the idea that students generally will live up to teacher expectations, and the reverse is also true. If teachers have no expectations for students will most likely have little expectations of themselves. And as we have learned in the previous chapter, some teachers have different expectations for high achieving students. The belief that all students can learn is a powerful idea. However, what does that mean? If all students can learn, what are you prepared to do for those students who have difficulty learning or refuse to learn? Is it the teacher's responsibility to have high expectations for all students, especially for those who are at risk? Is it important to have a vision for a student that the student may not hold for themselves? The theory in this slide describes teacher expectation theory. Slide 13, that idea in the previous slide related to teacher expectation theory is supported by an experiment. And a teacher was told that certain students were very bright, but they had not yet bloomed or reached their potential. Now, the reality was that these students were not any different relative to student achievement from all the other students in the class, but the teacher was told that this particular group was different, that they were actually brighter. Now, because the teacher thought that these students were, quote-unquote special. She had high expectations for them and believed in their ability to achieve beyond the norm. Now, these students did outperform all other students in the class, even though their ability was similar or equal to the rest of the class. This experiment was known as the Rosenthal effect. Does your experience as a student support this theory? And if you read page 35, you can find out more about the role of teacher expectations. Slide 14, the last theory, theory number 3, is called the cultural differences theory. And often the differences in culture between home and school is blamed for the lack of student achievement. Language can be a factor. Language patterns can be a factor and may be a contributing factor to this perception of students as being low achievers. Now, if you read pages 36 and 37, you can learn how language can be seen as a contributing factor to achievement. Note that when teachers are aware of such differences in language or culture, they can make adjustments in the classroom to accommodate students of different cultural backgrounds. Slide 15 deals with the idea of culturally responsive teaching. We know about those 3 theories in terms of minority achievement. Now, there are ways that teachers can adjust and accommodate students with different cultural backgrounds. And culturally responsive teaching involves understanding and valuing the cultural differences that can exist in a classroom. The next slide, slide 15, provides strategies for working with students in multicultural classrooms. Now, read each strategy and provide examples of how these strategies could be implemented in the classroom. And you can move on after you've done that, go on to slide 16 and look at the possible answers. This information is also on table 2.2 at the bottom of page 38. So if you go to slide 16, you can see the strategies on the left-hand side and see if you can provide some examples on the right-hand side of that would be related to those theories. If you have difficulty, go on to slide 17 and you can see the answers or the possible examples that are related to those strategies. Slide 18, language diversity, the second topic, will deal with those who speak a language other than English. These may be students who are in ELL or English Language Learners programs or ESOL, English Speakers of Other Languages program. On slide 19, entitled Language Diversity is a very important component of diversity. With your language skills, would you be able to communicate with, let's say, someone that has a Spanish background? Would it be appropriate for you to even try if you didn't have the ability to communicate? As a teacher, how would you communicate with a parent who does not speak English? What resources might you find in your school or school system to assist you in communicating with the parent? Pages 41 to 44 provides information related to language differences. Slide 20, language diversity, has to do with the concept of the word dialect, which is a variation of standard English that is distinct in vocabulary, grammar, and punctuation or pronunciation. If you take a look at this YouTube clip, you'll get a better idea of the role that dialects play in communicating and in our language. Slide 21, entitled Language Diversity. What is the code of power? And how would you respond to a student who said, "I ain't got no pencil"? And what is bidialecticism? Read page 42 for the answers or for ideas related to these concepts. Slide 22 depicts three very important terms related to language diversity. Limited English Proficient, which is abbreviated as LEP, English as a Second Language, abbreviated ESL, or English Language Development, which is ELD. So make sure you're familiar with these terms and their meaning. On slide 23, entitled English Language Development Programs, based on pages 42 and 43 in your text, can you provide a description of these programs that are on the left-hand side? Descriptions can be found on the next slide. So without moving on to slide 24, see if you can describe bilingual maintenance program, what that means, or transition bilingual programs, or English as second language. See if you can provide the description for those. Also, please note the considerations column on the far right. And after you've done that, then go on to slide 23 and you can see the answers for that. Slide 25, Language Diversity in the Classroom. Have you considered obtaining your certification in ESL, and what coursework would be needed? After you graduate here from Young Harris, it might be very helpful to you, considering the trends, to have your certification in ESL and be able to more effectively work with students that had different language backgrounds. On slide 26, there are some best practices for working with students that have different language diversity, and see pages 43 and 44 for additional information. And the question I pose is, would these practices also be appropriate for students who are at risk? Would these practices be appropriate for all students? And on slide 27, read on page 45 in your text about Emma's internship and pick a grade level you'd like to teach, what differences might exist in that classroom, and list at least 5 differences that you may encounter as a teacher at your grade level. Provide your response as response number 3 on Forum 2. This will conclude our first part of Chapter 2, and then we'll move on to Chapter 2, Part 2 momentarily.